the tragic story of the Great Gatsby Mansion. A dream house that was meant to live forever, a place where the night seemed more golden than the day. Rivers of champagne flowed here. The orchestra played so loudly the sea fell silent. But beneath the glitter lay debt, fear, and silence. The estate that inspired The Great Gatsby was not just a stage for parties. It was a trap. Fame was bought, names were erased, and deals were signed in quiet. The owner believed stone would shield his reputation. But what if the stone only hid the cracks? When the lights went out, the friends vanished. When the music faded, the bills remained. And one day this palace simply disappeared from the map, as if it had never existed. Why? Who paid the real price for this myth? With money, with family, with their future. This is not a fairy tale about wealth. It is a story of how a dream becomes a burden, and how sparkle becomes a mask. So tell me, if the house that created the Gatsby legend could not survive, can the legend itself? If you enjoy deep investigations into Gilded Age architecture and the families who built it, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which house to explore next. Your support makes these detailed stories possible. Part 1. Gold Coast Morning. Your support makes these detailed stories possible. Now let's step onto that shore. May 1899. The North Shore of Long Island runs roughly 20 miles east from Flushing Bay, a coastline of farms, fishing villages, and quiet coves. No palaces yet, no gates, just salt wind and an occasional country house set back from the sound. But money is on the move. Families with names still unfamiliar to the society pages are buying land by the acre. They arrive by private rail car, study the waterline, sign papers, depart. This is not Newport. Not yet. It is a blank map where new fortunes plan to write themselves in stone. At Roslyn, where the harbor narrows and the trees climb steep bluffs, one parcel stands apart, elevated, sheltered. A natural amphitheater facing north toward Connecticut and west toward the city's distant smoke, 216 acres, deep water access, forest dense enough to hide an estate, open enough to frame views. The price is steep. The buyer does not hesitate. His name, Clarence Hungerford Mackay, 25 years old, heir to the Comstock silver fortune and the commercial cable company. An empire of undersea telegraph lines binding continents. He is not building a summer cottage. He is announcing arrival. Beside him stands Catherine Dewar Mackay, 22, daughter of a United States Army general and a Livingston by blood. Old New York runs in her veins. His money is Western, recent, raw. Hers is colonial, quiet, assured. Together, they embody the marriage that will define this shore. New capital joined to old pedigree. They call it progress. History will call it the Gilded Age. They commissioned Stanford White, not merely his firm, the man himself. Stanford White of McKim, Mead and White, the Washington Square Arch, Madison Square Garden, the Century and Metropolitan Clubs. An architect whose name alone signals scale, permanence, and a beauty photographs never fully catch. He is 55. His reputation is unassailable. His fees reflect it. Mackay does not blink. The program is exact. Not a house. An estate. A great hall for 200 guests. A music room tuned for soloists. A dining room seating 40 without crowding. A library for serious collecting. Guest wings prepared to house weekend parties of 20 or more. Terraces overlooking the water. Gardens stepping down to a private harbor. Staff quarters concealed yet efficient. Every room sized to express not comfort, but consequence. White listens, sketches, refines. He returns with elevations that make Catherine draw breath and Clarence nod once, sharply. The budget? $2 million. Roughly $70 million in today's terms. The schedule? 3 years. Peak workforce? 200 men. Materials: Indiana limestone, Italian marble, domestic copper, Belgian glass, Oregon timber. Nothing ordinary, nothing sourced from just down the road. It is May of 1899. McKinley sits in the White House. The war with Spain has just ended. America holds new possessions: Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico. Empire abroad, mansions at home. The symmetry is not accidental. The Mackays stand on raw ground. Wind lifting her veil, his hand shading against the glare off the sound. In that moment, they believe that stone can hold happiness. That scale equals safety. That a house, if made grand enough and well enough, will keep out time, judgment, doubt. White believes as well. He has built monuments before. This one will be different. Lighter in spirit, less marble palazzo, more American ease. He names it Harbor Hill. The name sounds gentle, pastoral, almost modest. It will be none of those things. Ground breaks in July. Part 2, Workshop Under Sky. The first crews arrive by barge and wagon. Surveyors with transits, engineers with stakes, foremen with lists already 2 pages long. They find forest, not field. Oaks a century old. Maples thick as columns. Undergrowth dense enough to lose a man. White's plan calls for clearing 40 acres without ruining the natural amphitheater that sold Mackay on the site. Selective cutting. Strategic thinning. The trees that remain must frame views, not block them. This is surgery, not logging. By August, the excavation begins. Foundation depth, 12 feet at the deepest point, stepping into bedrock where the mansion's core will anchor. The hole spans 160 feet across the front facade and runs 90 feet along the main axis. Crews rotate in shifts. Steam shovels claw earth. Teams of horses drag spoil down temporary roads to raise the low ground near the shore. The noise carries across the harbor. Fishermen complain. Mackay's lawyers answer with plats, deeds, and silence. September brings stone. Indiana limestone comes by rail. 60 tons in the first shipment. 300 by year's end. Each block numbered to match White's drawings. Masons set up field shops, cutting sheds, mortar beds, a temporary forge for the ironwork. The workforce grows. At peak, 200 men. Though the count changes with the season, masonry sleeps in winter and wakes in spring. Some hold on for 3 years, others 3 weeks. Their names survive in payroll ledgers kept at the New York Historical Society. Domenico Russo, master mason, 42 from Carrara. James Whitfield, lead carpenter, 51, trained in Edinburgh. Liam Brennan, 23, general labor. Drowns in 1900 when a barge overturns with copper flashing aboard. No family found. Burial at public expense. The work goes on. The system is industrial. Materials arrive on timetables tighter than passenger trains. Lumber from Oregon. Old-growth fir for framing. Clear vertical grain. No knots larger than a dime. Copper from Montana smelters, rolled in Philadelphia, shipped in coils weighing 600 pounds apiece. Glass from Belgium, each pane crated in sawdust and insured for replacement cost plus freight. Nothing improvised. White's office issues revised drawings weekly. Contractors curse the precision and follow it. By 1901, the shell rises. Limestone walls climb beyond the second-floor line. Scaffolding wraps the structure. A timber exoskeleton braced with hemp rope and iron dogs. Seen from the water, it resembles a cathedral in mid-construction. Visitors reach for Rams and Chartres. European fantasies planted in American soil. White refuses the comparison. Not Gothic, he says. Renaissance restraint scaled to the new world. Classical proportions. New ambition. Roofing begins in the spring of 1902. Copper tiles, each one stamped and soldered. Overlap in courses that will bloom green within 5 years. Slate covers the secondary roofs. Lead flashing seals every joint. The ridge runs 140 feet. 4 chimneys climb another 20 feet above it. Each stack serves multiple hearths. 17 in all, depending on whether you count the servants' grates. Inside, plasterers lay 3 coats, scratch, brown, finish. Electricians thread wire through chases, white hid in the walls. Conduits invisible once the moldings go on. The lighting plan calls for 200 fixtures. A single plate in the Great Hall governs 12 separately. Craft and technology meet without a seam. By autumn of 1902, the house is weathertight. Not finished, weathertight. Painters, gilders, tile setters, cabinet makers will stay another 6 months. But the roof holds. The windows seal. Stand in the Great Hall, and you hear only wind, not rain. Mackay visits weekly. Catherine less often. She is pregnant with their first child. The house waits for life to fill it. Part 3. Night of 1,000 Lights, June 14th, 1903. Harbor Hill receives its first guests. Not a grand opening, a dinner. 32 names, chosen with care. Architects, patrons, editors from Harper's and Scribner's. Stanford White attends, seated near Catherine. Clarence rises for a toast. Brief enough to signal confidence, long enough to acknowledge debts. The dining room glows. Candelabra, 18 arms each, 6 in all, throw light that bends off silver, crystal, and pale gold damask on the walls. Menus in French list 7 courses. The wines run German, French, and California. The meal lasts 3 hours. No one complains. This is rehearsal. The true performance begins in 1905. By then the Mackays have a rhythm. Winters in the city, springs and autumns at Harbor Hill. Summers in Europe or Newport. Though Harbor Hill increasingly competes with Newport for space on the calendar, the house demands presence. Empty, it ages. Lived in, it declares itself. They host musicians. In April 1906, Enrico Caruso sings in the music room, a private recital for 60 guests who arrive by special train from Pennsylvania Station. The acoustics laid out by White with advice from engineers at Carnegie Hall carry Caruso's voice to the back terrace without amplification. Guests stand outside, listening through open French doors, afraid to breathe. Catherine weeps. Clarence writes a check for $5,000 to the Metropolitan Opera's Education Fund. It clears within 48 hours. They host philanthropists. In 1908, a dinner raises money for a tuberculosis sanatorium on Staten Island. 200 donors attend. The Grand Hall, cleared of furniture, takes tables for 20 set in 2 rows. Service requires 40 waiters, borrowed from the Plaza Hotel, and trained for 3 days on Harbor Hill's floor plan and the sequence of 12 courses. The evening brings in $83,000. Editorials in the New York Times praised the Mackays' generosity without noting that the dinner itself cost $12,000 to stage. They host scholars, archaeologists, naturalists, historians. Catherine's preference. She establishes a lecture series, autumn evenings, lantern slides, topics ranging from Egyptology to marine biology. Attendance is by invitation. Audiences rarely exceed 50. These nights feel different, quieter. The house settles into its library, its smaller salons, a human scale. Clarence tolerates the series. He does not attend. They host society. This is the engine. Balls in 1909, 1910, and 1912. Guest lists cresting over 300. Orchestras, not quartets, orchestras. Set in the music room. Doors open to flood the hall with sound. Flowers shipped from Pennsylvania greenhouses. Roses, orchids, lilies arranged in columns 8 feet high. Champagne by the case. Suppers served past midnight. Dancing until 3. The ritual runs like machinery. Invitations go out 6 weeks in advance. RSVPs are tracked by Catherine's secretary. Seating charts are revised daily as acceptances arrive. Menus go to Catherine for approval. Wine lists to Clarence, floral schemes to both. Staff expands from 30 to 60 for these nights. Extra footmen are hired through Manhattan agencies. Temporary cooks reinforce the kitchen's core team of 5. The cost per ball, $15,000 to $20,000, roughly $600,000 today. Not counting wear on carpets, linens, crystal, not counting the strain. Because beneath the light, something shifts. Photographs from these years show Catherine smiling. But the smile tightens. Clarence grows heavier. Portraits redden his face. They appear together in public. In private, servants notice quiet. Separate bedrooms. Meals at different hours. The house fills with guests and empties at dawn. The couple coexists with it. In 1914, the whispers begin. Not about the house, about the marriage. Society columns hint. Gossip items imply. That summer, Catherine travels to Europe alone and stays 4 months. Clarence remains at Harbor Hill, hosting smaller gatherings, fewer lights. The grand hall, built for joy, learns to echo. Part 4. Shadow in the Golden Room. By 1915, the separation is no longer whispered, it is printed. Town Topics, the scandal sheet that terrifies New York society, runs a blind item transparent enough to identify. A cable magnate's wife prefers Paris to the North Shore. One wonders if undersea wires carry messages home, or only silence. Catherine does not respond. She remains in Europe through the winter. Her letters to friends, preserved in the Douar family papers, speak of museums, salons, and relief work as the war intensifies. She does not mention Clarence. She does not mention Harbor Hill. The omission is louder than complaint. Clarence fills the house with guests, more dinners, more concerts, larger guest lists, longer weekends. He invites business associates now, not only society, men from the cable company, the postal telegraph merger, and the wireless experiments beginning to threaten his empire. The tone shifts. Less music, more cigars. Less Catherine's taste, more Clarence's will. The house adapts. Staff notice which rooms stay dark, which silver never leaves its drawer. In May 1914, Catherine returns, not to reconcile, to negotiate. The details stay private, but the framework emerges later in court filings. Separate residences, shared public obligations, unity on the surface, distance underneath. Catherine keeps her apartments at Harbor Hill. Clarence keeps his schedule. They appear together at events that matter. Charity galas, weddings, funerals. Photographs show them side by side, not touching. Society accepts the performance. Divorce would be scandal. This is arrangement. Harbor Hill feels it. Servants describe the change. Meals for 2 become meals for 1, served in different rooms at different hours. The morning room, Catherine's domain, crowded with books and correspondence, closes in her absence. Clarence's study expands. He works later, sleeps less, drinks more. His physician calls weekly. The butler keeps brandy stocked in 3 places. A house built to display harmony now displays its opposite. Children witness it. Catherine McKay bears 3. Ellen in 1903, John in 1907, Catherine in 1909. They grow up in a palace, divided. Ellen later writes of rooms that belong to one parent or the other, and the rooms between where we played, careful not to choose sides. John leaves for boarding school at 12 and seldom returns on breaks. The younger Catherine develops migraines doctors cannot explain, and staff suspect are a form of escape. This is not metaphor. This is record. The cost of Harbor Hill in 1915 is $80,000 a year in maintenance, staff, utilities, and taxes, roughly $2.4 million today. The mansion must be fed whether the marriage survives or not. Lawns require mowing. Roofs require repair. Staff require wages. The house does not pause for personal crisis. Clarence pays. Catherine endures. The estate continues. But something essential breaks. The purpose shifts. Harbor Hill was built as a declaration. Love made visible, fortune made permanent, family made dynasty. By 1916, it is a stage set. The thing that must be maintained because selling it would admit failure. And failure is unthinkable. So the lights stay on. The staff remains employed. The gardens are tended. Guests still arrive for weekends that look, in photographs, exactly like the weekends of 1905. Same rooms, same rituals, same curated beauty. Walk through after midnight when the guests have retired and the servants have withdrawn, and you find something different. Not ruin, not neglect. Something harder to name. A palace that has learned loneliness, rooms too large for the people who live inside them. Silence no orchestra can permanently cover. The house stands. The marriage does not. And outside, the world is changing in ways that will make both palace and pain feel like relics of a lost age. Part 5. Hidden Hands. Inside, the work continues. Harbor Hill at full stride needs 38 people. Winter trims that to 22. Summer, when the family travels, drops to 15. A skeleton crew preserving what absence cannot erase. These are not abstractions. They are names, wages, and schedules measured in decades. Charles Brennan, head butler, arrives in 1904 and stays 23 years. His realm is the front of house, the visible machinery of service. He directs the footmen, coordinates with the kitchen, and keeps the plate. Silver for 40, crystal for 60, china in 3 patterns depending on the occasion. In 1915, his salary is $1,200 a year, plus room, board, and livery. Roughly $36,000 today. He supervises 8 people directly. Deference to him is total. Beneath him stands the hierarchy that makes grandeur possible. 2 footmen rotate during events. Their craft is motion without presence, opening doors, drawing chairs, pouring wine, clearing plates, all performed at the edge of a guest's vision. Training lasts 6 months. The best anticipate needs without seeking a glance. They are furniture that breathes. 5 housemaids work in rotation. 2 for the family rooms, 1 for the guest wings, 2 for the public rooms. They begin at 6 in the morning and finish near 8 at night, with meals taken in the servants' hall, never in the dining room. Tasks include beds, fires, lamps, dusting, laundry sorting, and, when required despite modern plumbing, chamber pots. Wages run from $18 to $25 a month. The head housemaid earns $35. They share the 3rd floor, 4 beds to a room, 1 wardrobe between 2. The kitchen is another country. Chef Auguste Villard, recruited from Delmonico's in 1906, commands a brigade of 5. 2 sous chefs, a saucier, a pastry specialist, and a kitchen maid who does not cook but scrubs, chops, and hauls. Villard's pay is $2,000. Second only to the estate manager. He earns it. Dinners for 30 demand 4 hours of preparation. Balls for 300 require 3 days and borrowed hands. He plans menus, orders provisions, and tastes everything. His standards are French. His temper is notorious. Turnover in his kitchen is high. Outside, the grounds are a living ledger. 12 men in summer, 6 in winter. Head gardener Thomas Crawford keeps 14 acres of lawn, seasonal flower beds, orchards yielding apples and pears largely for staff, and greenhouses pushing roses through the year. Grass is cut with push mowers. Motorized options exist, but Mackay prefers the quiet. Edging alone takes 2 men a full day each week. Trees are trimmed constantly. Every window must frame effortlessness. Effort is the point. The stables employ 4, a head groom, 2 stable hands, and a carriage driver who shifts to chauffeur as motorcars arrive. By 1912, Harbor Hill owns 3 automobiles. The horses remain for riding, not transport. The groom, Patrick Hayes, has worked with horses for 40 years. He teaches Ellen McKay to ride side saddle, a skill she dislikes but masters. Below stairs runs a world of bells and boards. The call system ties 112 pull cords throughout the house to a numbered panel in the servants' hall. A bell rings, a number flips, a servant moves. To the family, it is silent. To the staff, it is the pulse of every hour. Bells for breakfast, for baths drawn, for fires laid, for carriages summoned. No bell goes unanswered. That is the contract. And the cost? Payroll alone totals $42,000 a year in 1915. Add provisions, uniforms, coal, and upkeep of the servants' quarters, and the figure climbs to $55,000, roughly $1.6 million today. That is the price of invisible service. The staff know what the family sometimes forgets. The house does not run on wealth. It runs on wages, hours, and hands that ache by nightfall. Those hands also carry pride. They maintain something larger than themselves. Harbor Hill is their work too, even if their names appear on no cornerstone. Part 6. The Grammar of Stanford. White's name is carved into the limestone above the garden entrance. Stanford White, architect, MD CCCCII. The date marks completion, not ego. He does not need to announce himself. The building does it for him. Stand at the entrance gate, 500 feet from the house, and the logic reveals itself. The approach is theater. A gravel drive climbs in a gentle curve through trees, White specified. Maples for autumn color, oaks for permanence. Space to frame views without crowding them. The house appears in fragments, first a chimney, then a roof line, and at last the full facade as the drive bends a final time into the forecourt. Not sudden, inevitable. Choreography in stone. The facade speaks a classical grammar with an American accent. Symmetry governs. The central block rises 3 stories, flanked by lower wings that step back and down, setting a rhythm, tall, short, tall, that balances mass with grace. Limestone cream when new, warming toward beige by 1910. Corinthian columns at the main entrance take their proportions from Palladio, enlarged by about 1/5. American patrons want European refinement, only larger. White obliges without vulgarity. Windows follow rules older than the Republic. On the first floor, they are tall and arched to flood public rooms with light. On the second, they become rectangular and smaller, the bedroom scale. On the third, they simplify further for servants' quarters and storage, where ornament would be waste. The hierarchy is legible from the exterior. You can read the house's social order before crossing the threshold. It is the terrace that reveals White's quiet brilliance. The house sits on manufactured high ground, earth-shaped to form a platform. From the south facade, terraces fall in 3 broad stages toward the harbor, each level defined by balustrades, each transition marked by stairs wide enough for 6 people abreast. The descent is processional. At the bottom, a pergola frames the view north across the Sound. Stand there at sunset and the house behind you glows. Stand at the house looking down, and the water becomes the estate's horizon. White understood that great houses need great distance, not from neighbors, from the ordinary world. Inside, the spatial grammar continues. The entrance hall runs about 30 feet wide and 50 feet long, with roughly 22 feet to the coffered ceiling. Scale that declares importance without crushing intimacy. From here, circulation divides. To the left, the music room and library, Catherine's territory. To the right, the dining room and study, Clarence's domain. At center, the grand stair rising in a double-height volume lit from a skylight 3 floors above. This is the heart. Every path arrives here or departs from it. White's genius lies in proportion, not novelty. He does not invent, he refines. Room dimensions obey tested ratios of height to width and length to height that European architects codified centuries earlier. The golden section recurs, roughly 1.618 to 1, in door heights, window spacing, and the relation of floor area to ceiling volume. The ratios feel right without calling attention to themselves. The eye rests. The body moves naturally. You do not think about architecture. You simply live in it, certain the space could not be otherwise. Set Harbor Hill beside its European models. Tuscan Renaissance villas, Palladio in the Veneto. White borrows their language. Loggias, colonnades, proportional systems, and translates. European villas grew from agricultural estates, where symmetry reflected farm logic. Harbor Hill grows from industrial wealth, where symmetry asserts control. Same vocabulary, different sentence. The result is a house that photographs beautifully and lives well. Rooms flow without confusion. Light arrives generously. Views align on axes, terrace, hall, water. They link. Stand at the center of the main floor and you can see through the house to the sound beyond. This is enfilade. The French named it, White perfected it for clients who wanted Europe without leaving America. Architecture as argument, space as proof. White built Harbor Hill to say, wealth, yes, and taste, power, yes, and restraint. The house succeeds at both. Part 7. Wires and Fortunes. But someone had to pay for it. Clarence Mackay inherited an empire measured in miles of copper wire on the ocean floor. His father, John William Mackay, reached California in 1851 with nothing. By 1873, he co-owned the Comstock Lode, the richest silver strike in American history. By 1884, he owned something more valuable, the Commercial Cable Company, laying telegraph lines across the Atlantic when most people still called the technology experimental. The business was simple in concept, staggering in execution. Messages from New York to London traveled as electrical pulses through insulated copper, resting roughly 3 miles beneath the sea. Each cable cost $1 million to manufacture and lay. Each was vulnerable to ship anchors, undersea quakes, or slow corrosion. When they worked, they collapsed time. A message that once took 2 weeks by steamship now arrived in roughly 2 minutes. Speed bred monopoly. By 1900, commercial cable carried about 23% of transatlantic telegraph traffic. Annual revenue reached $4.2 million. Roughly $130 million today, with profit margins near 40% in good years. Clarence took control when his father died in 1902. He was 28. Harbor Hill was still rising. The timing was not accidental, but the technology was already being hunted: radio, wireless telegraphy. In 1901, Guglielmo Marconi proved a transatlantic wireless signal. The same year, Harbor Hill's walls climbed past the second floor. The transmission was crude and unreliable, limited to Morse, but it needed no seabed cables, no repair ships, no million-dollar strands of copper, only towers, transmitters, current. Mackay saw the threat and answered with expansion. Between 1902 and 1910, commercial cable opened 4 new Atlantic routes, established offices in 12 additional cities, and poured roughly $2 million into equipment upgrades. Diversification followed: domestic telegraph service, messenger delivery in Manhattan, and experimental wireless research to hedge against Marconi's gains. Clarence negotiated personally, traveled to London quarterly, and twice testified before Congress to defend cable monopolies against antitrust moves. The work was relentless, the returns substantial. In 1907, McKay's personal income from commercial cable and related holdings reached $800,000, roughly $24 million today, enough to maintain Harbor Hill, the Manhattan townhouse, the Newport cottage, the staffs at all three, and still bank half. But fortunes built on technology die by technology. By 1912, wireless had improved. Marconi's company launched commercial transatlantic service. In April of that year, the Titanic disaster broadcast wireless distress calls that summoned rescue ships and saved lives. Public sentiment shifted. Wireless was no longer experimental. It was essential. Markets agreed. Marconi shares tripled between 1911 and 1913. Commercial cable stagnated. Mackay adapted again. In 1914, he merged commercial cable with postal telegraph, forming the second largest telegraph company in America after Western Union. The merger delivered economies of scale, removed a rival, and produced short-term profit, and also signaled retreat. Mergers are what firms do when growth stops. War complicated everything. In 1917, the United States government seized control of international cable traffic for national security. Compensation was promised, paid slowly, and calculated below market rates. Mackay's revenue fell by roughly 30% in a single year. Costs did not fall. Maintenance, payroll, and interest on loans used to finance the postal merger continued regardless. By 1918, Mackay's personal income had slipped to $400,000. Still large, still enough. But half of what it had been 6 years earlier, and the trajectory was clear. The technology that made him rich was being displaced by a technology he did not control. Harbor Hill noticed. Staff cuts began softly. A gardener not replaced at retirement. Guest suites opened less often. Balls became annual instead of quarterly. The wine cellar stopped adding vintages. Whispers, not shouts. Servants noticed. Tradesmen noticed. Society, not yet. The house still shone. The lawns remained immaculate. The facade showed no cracks. But the fortune beneath was thinning, and the weight above was not. Part 8: War Changes the Music. April 6, 1917. America declares war on Germany. By April 20th, Harbor Hill declares itself too. The grand hall that hosted 300 dancers the previous autumn now seats the North Shore Women's War Relief Committee. 70 women gather at tables once reserved for champagne and dessert. They roll bandages. Catherine Mackay presides, her organizational skills, dormant in social matters, suddenly essential. She sets quotas. 500 bandages per session, each rolled to Red Cross specifications and inspected before packing. The women work in shifts. Some bring servants. The servants work beside them. This is not symbolism. This is production. By summer, the transformation deepens. The music room becomes headquarters for Liberty Bond drives. Local banks send representatives. Mackay pledges $50,000 personally and underwrites another $100,000 in bonds sold to employees of commercial cable and postal telegraph. His name appears in newspapers not for entertaining but for duty. Society pages give way to civic notices. The dining room still hosts fundraising dinners, but the tone is sober. Menus narrow to 4 courses instead of 7. American wines replace French. Proceeds support the Red Cross, the YMCA, and camp libraries for soldiers, training at Camp Upton, 30 miles east. Guests arrive in evening dress and leave their jewels at home. Excess is suspect now. Restraint is virtue. In October 1917, Catherine volunteers Harbor Hill for convalescent use if needed. The offer is noted, filed, not immediately accepted. Long Island hospitals have capacity, but the gesture matters. The estate that once symbolized private wealth now offers itself for public good. The staff adjusts. Charles Brennan, the butler, organizes a war savings plan. Employees pledge 5% of wages to Liberty bonds. Technically voluntary, practically universal. Patriotism and peer pressure are hard to separate. By war's end, Harbor Hill staff will have purchased $4,000 in bonds, roughly $120,000 today. Brennan keeps the records. He will see every dollar repaid. Clarence's contribution is less visible, more substantial. Commercial cable donates transmission capacity for military communications. Transatlantic lines carry coded messages, prioritized ahead of commercial traffic. Revenue falls. McKay does not complain in public. Privately, his accountants tally the loss. $80,000 in foregone income by November 1918. He does not seek reimbursement. The war also brings new kinds of guests. In spring 1918, Harbor Hill hosts a weekend for officers from Camp Upton. Majors, colonels, a brigadier general. The aim is morale and fundraising. The officers tour the grounds, dine in the formal room, and hear a quartet play Brahms and Dvorak. Nothing German. Photographs show uniforms on the terrace, with the sound behind them, expressions careful. They are being evaluated as much as honored. Society is watching to learn whether the wealthy will share or merely gesture. Mackay passes the test. He writes another check, $25,000, to the Camp Upton Welfare Fund. But something has shifted that will not shift back. Harbor Hill opened as a declaration of private achievement. It staged private pleasures for private circles. War forced it open. Committees, causes, strangers walking halls built for intimates. The house fulfilled its duty, and once opened, the door does not fully close. After the armistice in November 1918, life does not return to 1914. Parties resume, smaller. Guest lists shrink. The tone never recovers its pre-war lightness. People have seen too much, spent too much, lost too much. They have also seen inside estates like Harbor Hill, not as guests, but as citizens claiming temporary use. The house remains grand. Grandeur alone no longer justifies itself. Clarence and Catherine sense it without naming it. They keep hosting. The rituals persist. The center has moved. And 20 miles west, in a rented cottage, a young writer watches the shoreline and imagines something that will outlast every party. Part 9. Myth and Map. His name is F. Scott Fitzgerald. The year is 1922. He rents a house in Great Neck, modest by Gold Coast standards, close enough to see the mansions and hear weekend music drift across the water. He is 26. His first novel, This Side of Paradise, made him famous 2 years earlier. His second, The Beautiful and Damned, sold well but drew mixed notices. He needs a third book. He needs it to be different. So he watches. Fitzgerald attends parties along the shore. Not at Harbor Hill. He lacks the standing, but at estates near enough in spirit. Columned facades, terraced lawns, motor cars and yachts unloading guests, orchestras until dawn, champagne in amounts that turn prohibition into a distant joke. He studies the performers, men who minted fortunes in war contracts, speculation, real estate, women who married titles, money, or both. Everyone performs wealth, joy, the faith that 1922 will last forever. He recognizes the performance. He is performing too. Fitzgerald's income in 1923 is $28,000, roughly $500,000 today. Substantial for a writer. inadequate for this shore. His capital is literary celebrity, not dynasty. He stands inside the world but not of it. The perfect angle for observation. In the autumn of 1923, he begins drafting. Working title, Trimalchio in West Egg. Setting, two fictional peninsulas, East Egg and West Egg, mapped from Great Neck and Sands Point, where Harbor Hill stands. Plot, a mysterious millionaire stages extravagant parties in a mansion designed to dazzle a woman who lives across the water. She is married, unattainable, the embodiment of what he wants but cannot hold. The parallels to Harbor Hill are not exact. Gatsby's house reads, Georgian colonial, not Renaissance. The parties are wilder, less curated, yet the geography is precise. Gatsby on the western peninsula looking east across the bay toward old money, inherited names, settled security. Harbor Hill's view reversed. He completes a manuscript in October of 1924 and revises through winter. The title changes to The Great Gatsby. Publication arrives on April 10, 1925. Initial sales disappoint. Roughly 20,000 copies the first year. Respectable, not spectacular. Reviews divide. Some praise the prose, others call the plot thin, and the characters unlikable. Fitzgerald earns under $2,000 in royalties. His editor at Scribner's sends consolations. The book will find its audience, he insists. Eventually. He is more right than he knows. But in 1925, Harbor Hill does not notice. The Mackays do not read Gatsby. Their staff does not discuss it. The novel sells modestly, slips from lists, and drifts into the seasonal current of American fiction. Only later does it return. Reissued for soldiers during the Second World War, adopted by universities in the 1950s, canonized in the 1960s. By 1970, The Great Gatsby sells more copies each year than it sold in its first decade combined. The Gold Coast of the novel, shimmering doomed, forever paused in the summer of 1922, becomes more real than the historical shore. People come to Long Island looking for Gatsby's house. They find estates, some preserved, many erased. They ask about the parties, the green light, the dock where Gatsby reached across the water toward a dream he could not quite name. Guides point to likely inspirations. Harbor Hill is always mentioned. The location fits, the scale fits. The striving made visible in stone fits most of all. But Gatsby's house, like Gatsby himself, is composite. A dozen estates contributed details, and Fitzgerald invented the rest. What matters is this. The novel gave permanence to the temporary. It turned wealth into myth, excess into elegy, a dated summer into something universal. Harbor Hill threw real parties for real guests who are mostly forgotten. Gatsby threw fictional parties for fictional guests who do not die. Part 10. Crash, Taxes, and Time Harbor. Hill's guests were mortal, so was the fortune that carried them. October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday. The stock market folds. 16 million shares trade in a single day. Fortunes evaporate between opening and closing bells. Clarence Mackay is not wiped out. His wealth is not centered in equities, but he is wounded. Postal telegraph at $42 in September sits at $18 by November. It never returns. The immediate impact is muted. No mass dismissals. No wings shut overnight. Harbor Hill in 1930 looks like Harbor Hill in 1928. Beneath the surface, the arithmetic changes. Annual maintenance in 1930, $95,000. Roughly $1.7 million today. Investment income. Down about 30% from 1928 and still falling. Clarence trims carefully. The wine cellar stops growing. Weekend parties thin out. The orchestra for the Christmas ball shrinks from 22 pieces to 14. Adjustments, not surrender. The Depression deepens. By 1932, postal telegraph runs at a loss. Businesses cut communication costs, revenue collapses. Western Union, the larger rival, survives on scale. Postal survives on Mackay's willingness to subsidize it. Between 1930 and 1935, he pours $1.2 million of personal capital into the company, roughly $27 million today, to preserve jobs, maintain service, and protect the family name on the letterhead. Harbor Hill pays. Staff cuts move from hints to policy. The gardening crew drops from 12 to 7. 3 housemaids go. The chauffeur stays. 2 stable hands do not. Charles Brennan, the butler, accepts a 10% cut to avoid dismissal. He remains. Others leave. By 1935, the permanent staff numbers 22, about half the pre-depression level. Taxes accelerate the decline. Property taxes, in 1925, $12,000 a year. In 1935, $28,000. The assessment more than doubles despite collapsing values elsewhere. Reason: Harbor Hill's improvements are permanent. Mansion, stables, greenhouses, terracing. Fixed assets the county can measure and tax. Land may fall, buildings remain. The burden hardens. Clarence challenges the assessment 3 times. He loses twice, wins a partial reduction once. The county needs revenue. Estates like Harbor Hill are dependable. Sympathy is scarce. By 1936, Clarence is 62. His health slips. Diabetes poorly controlled. Cardiac strain worsened by stress. His physician prescribes rest, travel, less responsibility. Clarence ignores it. Postal telegraph needs him daily. Merger talks with Western Union begin. Stall. Resume. Stall again. The company bleeds. He cannot stop it. He can only slow it. Catherine is at Harbor Hill intermittently. The fractured marriage calcifies into legal form. Appearances together are rare. When they occur, photographs show 2 people older than their years. Catherine is 59 in 1936 and looks 70. Clarence looks worse. The house begins to show restraint that reads as wear. Not neglect. Mackay will not allow that. But deferral. Paint due for refresh is postponed. Carpets due for replacement are turned. In 1937, the roof leaks. Repairs come but slowly, room by room, as cash permits. The ballroom ceiling stains. Visitors pretend not to notice. Prospective buyers appear. Between 1936 and 1940, 4 serious inquiries arrive. Developers want the land. Institutions want the building. All 4 offers share a pattern. Valuations at a fraction of construction cost. One bid in 1938, $350,000 for the entire estate. Mackay spent $2 million on the house alone. He refuses. Refusal is not a strategy. It is pride. By 1940, the question is no longer whether Harbor Hill will be sold, but whether it goes intact or in pieces. Clarence delays the answer. War arrives first. Part 11. After Silence. December 1941. Pearl Harbor. America mobilizes. Clarence Mackay is 67, too old for service, too ill for heavy war work. He offers what he can. Postal telegraph capacity for military messages, bond purchases, visible support. The government accepts. The gestures do not reverse his financial decline. Years earlier, Catherine had moved from estrangement to legal separation. Not divorce, but a formal division of property and obligations that played out in public filings and press coverage. The effect was clear. She retained the Manhattan townhouse and ongoing support. He kept Harbor Hill and the ailing telegraph interests. Whether that was a bargain or a burden depended on the year. He lives at Harbor Hill alone now. Staff has dwindled to 14. Whole wings close. The ballroom, unused since 1939, is shuttered to save heat. He occupies his study, his bedroom, the small dining room. The great hall echoes. Meals are served to one. Clarence had remarried in 1931, Anna Case, an opera singer 41 years old, 26 years his junior. Society whispered. The marriage was brief, often strained, and by 1944 functioned mostly on separate tracks. Anna favored Manhattan. Clarence remained on Long Island, increasingly isolated and unwell. Clarence dies on November 12, 1938, at age 64. The dates matter because rumors often tangle them. His death precedes America's entry into the war, and his second marriage long predates it. What follows is estate law, not society pages. After his death, Harbor Hill passes into the hands of executors. Anna contests elements of the will. Catherine, as first wife, already has her settlement. The children, Ellen, John, Catherine, receive shares but not control. Ellen, who married Irving Berlin in 1926 against her father's wishes, was disinherited and later partially restored. The result is complex, litigated, slow. During those years, Harbor Hill deteriorates. A caretaker and 2 groundsmen remain. The house is winterized but not heated. Pipes freeze in 1940, flooding the north wing. Repairs wait on court approvals. In 1941, vandals break windows. Local teenagers wander the abandoned mansion. Not legally abandoned, merely empty. By 1942, the family decides to sell. Wartime is the wrong market. Buyers are scarce. Developers cannot secure materials. The estate lists at $400,000. No offers. The price falls to $300,000. One inquiry, no contract. By 1945, the ask is $250,000 for a property that once cost more than $3 million to build and furnish. In 1947, a buyer appears. For the land, not the house. A developer proposes Harbor Hill Estates, roughly 60 residential lots carved from 216 acres. The mansion is an obstacle, not an asset. Demolition is baked into the bid. The family accepts $190,000, roughly $2.7 million today. The deal closes in August. Demolition begins in October 1947. 6 months of methodical erasure. Salvage crews go first. Marble mantles, crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, the grand stair. Sold to dealers and other houses seeking instant grandeur. The shell follows under dynamite and wreckers. Limestone is crushed for fill. Copper roof is stripped for scrap. By April 1948, the site is bare. 45 years after completion, Harbor Hill is gone. Not slowly, not by neglect, deliberately, efficiently, gone. Photographs remain. Floor plans sit in archives. A few fragments, gates, garden pieces, odd survivors, live in museums. But the house itself, the three-dimensional fact that Stanford White drew and hundreds built, no longer exists. What remains? The land subdivided. 60 houses where one once stood. Families who do not know their backyards held orchestras. And the myth, Gatsby's mansion. Never demolished. Forever hosting a party for guests who do not age. Part 12. Legacy and Hope. The irony is precise. Fiction preserved what fortune could not. Harbor Hill's demolition was not unique. Between 1940 and 1960, over 200 Gold Coast estates were destroyed. Reasons varied: taxes, maintenance costs, changing social values, suburban development pressure. The pattern was identical. Families sold. Developers purchased. Bulldozers arrived. Within months, mansions that took years to build became memories. but something shifted. In 1956, the National Trust for Historic Preservation formed, driven partly by outrage over these losses. In 1966, Congress passed the National Historic Preservation Act, establishing legal frameworks to identify and protect significant structures. States followed. New York created landmark designation processes. Local historical societies organized, documented, fought. Some estates survived. Oheka Castle, built 1919, 8 miles from Harbor Hill's site, saved in 1984, restored, now operates as a hotel and event space. Old Westbury Gardens, built 1906, preserved by the Phipps family, opened to the public in 1959, visited by 50,000 people annually. Sands Point Preserve, the former Guggenheim estate, saved from development in 1971, now a nature center and historic site. These victories share common elements: community advocacy, financial creativity, adaptive reuse, museums, schools, event venues, nature preserves, ways to make historic houses financially sustainable in a world that cannot afford staffs of 38. The loss of Harbor Hill taught preservationists what silence costs. Today, organizations like the Society for the Preservation of Long Island Antiquities, Preserve America, and local historical societies maintain databases, offer technical assistance, and mobilize public support when estates face demolition threats. Success is not guaranteed, but the fight happens now, publicly, loudly. You are part of this. Every time you visit a historic house museum, you justify its preservation budget. Every time you share a story like this, you build the cultural case for saving what remains. When a local estate faces development, your letter to the town board, your attendance at the hearing, your voice, these matter. Harbor Hill cannot be rebuilt, but dozens of estates like it still stand, still vulnerable, still waiting for communities to decide their value outweighs their inconvenience. The workers who built Harbor Hill are gone. The family that commissioned it, gone. The architect, the guests, the orchestras, all gone. What endures? The record, the photographs, the measured drawings, the stories we tell, and the choice we make today about the houses still standing. Gatsby is fiction, the losses are real. The next rescue is ours.